IBO World Champion, La Bella Bestia, coming to you to show my appreciation for the ring IQ. So if you haven't already,
get guard, but
wow,
Howard,
look at the strength.
follow and subscribe Ring IQ and check out the relay where they cover today's top boxing news.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. I'm sure that most of you have heard by now, Canelo Alvarez won't fight on the traditional September date to move next bout over to November. The Mexican star wanted more time to both train at his gym in San Diego and plot out a deal for his next fight, sources told ESPN. September 18th became tighter and tighter, and we made the decision today to focus on November, said Hearn, who promoted Alvarez's last 3 fights. Now it's unclear when and against whom Alvarez will fight. We made our deal on our side. We made that deal 2 weeks ago, and we had an understanding of what was going to happen, Bivol manager, Vadim Kornilov, told ESPN. We were waiting to see if the Canelo side was going to finalize. Maybe we'll find out what the reason was at some point. At this point, we just want to know if they still want to do the fight. If not, we have other options. Maybe Zerto or Artur Beterbiev. Those are good fights. Maybe Marcus Brown. Whatever the best option is, that's what we'll do to keep Bivol as active as possible at this point. Canelo Alvarez's longtime trainer and manager, Eddie Reynoso, was recently quoted as saying, "We were negotiating with Plant and both sides couldn't come to terms. And we also negotiated with WBA light heavyweight titleist Dimitri Bivol, the ring's number 2 ranked light heavyweight in the world," Reynoso said. But overall, with the negotiations going back and forth, the time got too short for us for a promotion on September 18th. When the time got that close, we decided on a decision. What was in our best interest was to make the fight the 4th week of October or maybe the first 2 weeks of November. We think that's what is best for everyone. The priority has always been to unify and make history at 168 pounds. I have a great relationship with Al Heyman. There are options out there. It could be Caleb Plant. It could be Bivol. It could be Triple G. Everything is possible, but I'll tell you what, Saul will fight before the year ends. It's going to be a good fight, a fight that the people want, and it will be a benefit to Saul's career and legacy. We're very blessed to be in this position in boxing, but I'm the one in charge, and I'm the one with the last say. So when it comes to his career, I'm his manager. Saul and I are a team. We have a great partnership. He trusts me, and I trust him. We made it this far because he trusts me and I trust him. In the end, we make the best decisions for us. We love working with Eddie Hearn. He's promoted our last 3 fights, and we're very happy with him. But we are free agents. We're able and willing to work with Bob Arum and Top Rank. We're able and willing to work with Al Heyman and the PBC. Any promoter out there, any network out there that gives us the best offers and puts the best numbers on the table, we're willing to work with them. We have a good relationship with every single one out there. We're family, and we have been together through all the good times and the bad ones. What do I think this means?
Second rehearsal for the PBC?
Yes. Canelo Alvarez has worked very hard,
Yes, he has.
very judiciously and very quickly to secure 3 of the 4 major titles in the super middleweight division, and he just needs that one last puzzle piece to make history for Mexican boxing and Mexican boxers.
Become this division's undisputed champion.
In an era where pugilistic punditry is riddled with propaganda, we can't lose sight of what's important. Canelo Alvarez needs that red belt to make history, and PBC, quite honestly, they need Canelo Alvarez to help sell those fights.
If you put the fan-driven narratives aside,
This could be a second chance for the PBC, a second opportunity to get the deal right with Canelo Alvarez, because at least now they know what he's averse to and they know what kind of situations he's willing to walk away from.
you can now pinpoint where you got it wrong the last time.
Far away from the prying eyes of the boxing community, the boxing public, the aforementioned parties, those in the know. They know exactly what went wrong and why. So this could be interpreted as an opportunity to get the deal right. And for the PBC, well, they need to, because Fox...
They want 4 to 5 pay-per-views annually.
Approximately 3 years ago, or close to it, when the PBC first jumped into bed with Fox, I don't think the people at Fox started doing business with the PBC to stage fights like Plant versus Uskateki or Plant versus Truax or Plant versus Durrell. They want big fights, big pay-per-views. And without Canelo Alvarez and his name, his marquee value, the biggest name anywhere at or around these weights in this country, without him,
Literally everything falls short of the mark.
and that arrangement with Fox, it's set to expire this year. Fox themselves, they have the option to renew for at least one more year. But without a Canelo Alvarez being on board, what would be the point?
They need him.
You'll notice that Eddie Reynoso left the door open for all sorts of possibilities. Maybe revisiting the Bivol fight on the Matchroom side of things, or maybe revisiting the Plant fight on the PBC and Fox side of things. You'll notice that Eddie Reynoso didn't close those doors. He didn't speak ill of the people over there at the PBC and Fox in spite of the Plant fight's collapse.
Didn't rush to assign blame to anybody.
The way that Caleb Plant did, the day it was announced that the fight was off, the day it was announced that negotiations had fallen apart.
Yeah, Eddie Reynoso didn't rush to play the blame game.
Neither did Canelo Alvarez, and it's because Team Canelo, they don't have to. They know who they are in all of this. They know their role. They know that between 160, 168, and even 175 pounds, they're the hottest commodity out there.
And they're free to roam.
Free to choose. It's up to you guys to get the deal right, because if you get it wrong, they can always walk and get 8 figures fighting somebody else.
Eddie Reynoso says time grew too short to promote the Bivol fight.
Between now and September 18th, that's less than 8 weeks to promote a fight. It's about 6, actually. 6 weeks to promote what would have been the Bivol fight. So you can see what the reasoning was there, that with just 6 weeks to promote this thing and the fight not actually being ironed out, does that really give you enough time to make it the gala spectacle that you want it to be?
They haven't taken that fight off the table.
Eddie Reynoso hasn't outright dismissed the possibility of revisiting that fight. But if you want my opinion, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, I think they want that last brass ring. I think they want that red belt. And that might leave them so inclined to revisit the Caleb Plant fight, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if Caleb Plant were willing to cross over to the DAZN side of things. Yet we see that even when it comes to the face of boxing in this part of the world, the PBC is unwilling to allow their fighters to cross the street, at least their champions, their actual belt holders. You know, you can get an Andy Ruiz to cross over to Matchroom or a Brian Castano to cross over to Golden Boy Promotions to fight for a title because they don't have one. But the guys that actually have belts, they wrap them in a protective cocoon.
Jermall Charlo.
Caleb Plant and several others. At a time when this fight was falling apart because Fox couldn't get the deal right, at no point in time did you hear Caleb Plant say that he's willing to do the fight on the DAZN side of things, even though they offered to do it as well.
But you never heard him once say he's willing to cross over.
He was prepared to let the parade go by and miss out on what would have been the biggest fight of his career as a professional boxer thus far. And that tells me that that sticking point could very well still be there for the Canelo Alvarez people if they revisit the Caleb Plant fight.
It's too soon to rule anything out.
Thus, I wouldn't rule that out. This may be a second shot for the people over there at the PBC and Fox to get the deal right because they need to. And in truth, I'm not happy with that proposition. I'm not happy with the idea of Canelo Alvarez crossing over to the Fox PBC side of things, because then all of his fights will come at an additional cost to me and you. But that is the reality of things, and it must be addressed. In other news, Matchroom's next installment of the Fight Camp series is set to go down tomorrow afternoon here in the United States, tomorrow night across the pond in the United Kingdom, and the undercard's all set to go. You know, Johnny Fisher's going to be there. Alen Babic, he's set to be taking on Mark Bennett. I'm rather confident that Alen Babic, the Savage, he should make it through that fight by way of knockout. Fabio Wardley's going to be taking on the very seasoned Nick Webb. I could see a situation where things are perhaps difficult for Fabio at first, but Nick Webb, he really don't take the best punch, so I could see a situation where Fabio gets him out of there late. The IBF title fight between Kid Galahad and James Dickens for the vacant IBF featherweight title. You guys know how I feel about that. I like Kid Galahad to win the fight. I like Kid Galahad to become the IBF's featherweight champion. And the second Fight Camp appearance of none other than the blonde bomber Ebony Bridges against Beck Connolly. This is a more important fight for Ebony than advertised. I mean, you might look at the opponent and tell yourself that, she's cannon fodder for Ebony Bridges.
Bet Connolly is.
Beck's a tough girl. She don't shy away from a fight. That's what her resume shows us. She's been in there with anyone from Terry Harper to Natasha Jonas to Carly Skelly to Ellie Scottney to Rachel Ball to Ramla Ali. Those are all fights that did not work out for Beck, but what you'll notice is that these are fighters that she's fought before, experiences that she has had.
She's been in there with some of the best and brightest fighters.
Sporting a professional record of 3 wins and 9 losses, you can see that Beck's record is upside down, and she is that kind of fighter. But what makes this fight important for Ebony,
She's got to show she's still marketable.
she's got to show that she can beat this kind of an opponent handily, perhaps even dispatch this kind of opponent, to show that she's on par with those other girls that have fought her. Ellie Scottney, Natasha Jonas, Terry Harper, so on and so forth. Ebony has to prove her worth, and you may be telling yourself that she kind of already did that with Shannon Courtenay, but Shannon, she doesn't plan on having a rematch with Ebony. She said as much. We talked about that here on the channel. As far as Shannon's concerned, until Ebony gets herself a belt, the rematch, that's off the table.
Ebony needs to win.
She does. But that's a given. That goes without saying. She doesn't just need to win. She needs to win big. She needs for this to be a victory.
A highlight reel knockout always helps.
Make yourself useful. Can she get a highlight reel knockout against the very game and very aggressive Beck Connolly? Well, I think so. I think she can. Ebony's a strong puncher. She doesn't come from a deep amateur background, some Olympic pedigree, but there are certain qualities about this fighter that stand out.
One of them is power.
That's one of her standout qualities as a fighter, one of her characteristics. She can pop. Among other things, she's a mid-range to inside puncher. She likes to punch within close quarters, well within striking distance.
Hooks and uppercuts.
Ebony's got a mean streak, and she's becoming more and more of an educated pressure fighter, as she favors pressure, favors fighting within close quarters, cutting off that ring, crowding the other girl. This fight will likely have a very different aesthetic than the Shannon Courtenay fight did, because Beck Connolly's nowhere near as fleet of foot as Shannon is. She's not a back foot, use the ring to your advantage and move kind of fighter. That's not who Beck is. Beck herself has a tendency to be very aggressive. Has a mean streak. Doesn't always work in her favor, but that is who she is. Ahead of this weekend's fight, Ebony Bridges herself was quoted as saying that she actually has a plan to stop Beck Connolly, but she doesn't plan on being reckless whilst looking for that knockout. And given the work ethic she's shown already, I'm actually confident that she can go in there and get the knockout. Tenuous associations from Gareth Davies aside, Ebony Bridges is a hard worker.
Look at how much attention she's gotten herself in just the last year.
Contrary to the critics' popular opinions and quips, that kind of stuff don't just happen on its own. It takes work, and if all Ebony Bridges were is a pretty face and a nice set of tits, she'd have got stopped at the hands of Shannon Courtenay, but that's not what happened. That's not what we saw. What we saw is that Ebony Bridges can punch, and she gave Shannon Courtenay a run for her money, regardless of how you scored it. So, I do like Ebony Bridges to win the fight tomorrow. It's just a question of how. Does she do so in spectacular fashion? And I'm going to go ahead and say yes. I'm going to go ahead and say I've got Ebony Bridges not only winning tomorrow's fight with Beck Connolly, but I have her stopping Beck Connolly. And what they do for her after that, your guess is as good as mine. And finally, per tweet from Michael Benson, Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence Jr. has been cleared to proceed as planned for August 21st after a judge rejected the injunction request from manager Audi Attar's Paradigm Sports, who are suing Pacquiao for breach of contract. What we can deduce from this ruling is that a breach has not actually been constituted by Audi Attar and Paradigm Sports management. One thing that always stood out to me in reference to Audi Attar's complaint, his lawsuit against Manny Pacquiao, is that they seemed jilted, bitter, that Manny decided not to fight Mikey Garcia. And, the Pacquiao people, their reasons for not signing on for that Mikey Garcia fight, at least according to them, Dale Kinsella, Manny Pacquiao's attorney, is that the numbers kept changing. The numbers kept decreasing for the fight.
That causes Pacquiao people to grow suspicious.
Initially, when those rumors and rumblings of a potential Pacquiao Pacquiao versus Mikey Garcia fight first started to surface and circulate, I thought Mikey was a shoo-in for the Pacquiao fight. And I often wondered, why did the fight fall apart? What happened? And apparently, according to Dale Kinsella, the reason Manny decided not to go through with that was because the numbers kept changing. That in unison with the empty promises associated with a Conroy-McGregory crossover fight that they could not deliver because Conroy lost 2 times in the octagon, 2 times in the cage to Dustin Poirier, thereby deflating any momentum a crossover fight would have had for Conroy and Manny Pacquiao. Put simply, Paradigm Sports could not deliver.
They couldn't constitute a breach of contract either.
When this news first broke, I was confident that the Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence Jr. fight would go through uninterrupted, and perhaps that the most that might come out of this is, maybe Manny's out a few million. Maybe. There was a frivolity associated with Adi Attar's complaint, his lawsuit, that really stood out to me. It seemed like they felt bitter and jilted that Manny decided not to fight Mikey, but Manny was never obligated to fight Mikey Garcia, and I want to make that clear. You can't constitute a breach of contract and
Ask for financial compensation.
based on Manny Pacquiao not fighting Mikey Garcia because he was never contractually obligated to fight Mikey Garcia, and he didn't cost you guys any money as a result of not fighting Mikey Garcia.
Yeah, that's not the way that works.
He can't be on the hook with you guys for millions upon millions of dollars for a fight that he decided not to have because he has the freedom of choice. It is his decision after all, not yours.
He doesn't work for you. You work for him.
And in the time that you have been working for him to negotiate situations and make things happen, nothing happened. Not a Mikey Garcia fight, not a Conor McGregor fight.
Nothing.
There was some mention of a multi-million-dollar advance made to Manny Pacquiao, something to the tune of $3.3 million. And at most I thought, well, maybe he'll be on the hook for that.
If he's on the hook for anything.
As it turns out, based on these reports, no damages were awarded to Adi Attar or Paradigm Sports. So it seems like Manny, he really dodged a bullet here, and he's not on the hook for anything. Though I do characterize the situation as Manny dodging a bullet based on Manny's countersuit.
The Vega Fria guy.
Based on Manny Pacquiao's countersuit, Vega Fria, who's supposed to be Manny Pacquiao's business manager, and the people over there at Paradigm, in so many words, conspired against Manny, worked out a deal amongst themselves using his name that would benefit them.
That's what the countersuit says.
And I think that still accents problem within Manny Pacquiao's camp, within his circle. He's got too many guys that are far too comfortable using his name for things, and this entire fiasco could have been avoided if he didn't have guys like Vega Fria.
Who authorized him to do business on your behalf?
What entitlements, if any, does he have, and who entitled him to do so? Because these things, they don't just appear out of the clear blue sky. These kinds of situations don't just happen on their own. Gross oversights oftentimes are the cause of these kinds of situations.
You got too many people around you.
And that still accents a problem for a potential political candidate who hopes to become his country's president in 2022. If you can't get your business affairs in order, how are you supposed to run a country?
This never had to happen.
This got messy. It made it to the courts, and it never needed to because you never had to jump into bed with these people to begin with.
That's all I'm saying.
At least this time it didn't cost you anything, but this can't keep happening.